Hello Steelers, and welcome to this review, with Tiny included, of 1914 by Great Escape Games. I got this recently after a conversation with Martin over at Seventh Son about 1914. I did actually know about it, but to be honest, I'd forgotten about it. So I thought after our conversation, I thought I'd get a copy and do a review of it as part of it. First of all, first things to say is Great Escape Games have a fantastic customer service, really good. I ordered this and I think it came within about 2 days, so there's very little waiting. It cost £15. You do get a deck of cards. I think there's 19 cards in there. They're part of the game. But it's a smallish booklet, I suppose. It's about 40 pages in total in this, and softback as well, as you can see, which is probably why it's a relatively cheap price of £15. As far as I'm aware, it is based on a similar game of 7 Days to the Rhine and also Iron Cross as well. It's within that world of gaming. Very simplified, high level. This one in particular is battalion level, but high level gaming. We'll talk about them more as we get into the book and what it does. Now, it's called 1914, so the title actually gives away the specific date of this particular game, and it is set in those first 6 months of the First World War, 1914, until the trenches. It does so until the trenches become turn the war of manoeuvre into a siege warfare, which is perfectly fine. Now, my issue with that, and I'm going to get some of the issues out of the way first of all, is that this is something that is very peculiar to the First World War. I've read this book and I think this could easily work for 1915, 16, 17 and 18 very easily. Just a couple of tweaks here and there and 1 or 2 extra added rules. So for example, mortars or tanks and things like that, aircraft. A few extra little rules, and because it's such an abstract system anyway, they would be relatively easy to add in. Now, it feels a little bit like sometimes with wargamers that they are very frightened to tackle the mid-period of the First World War, and it is an easy period to play. It's even an easy period to model as well on the tabletop. Not everything is shell-blasted cratered landscapes, not everything is deep trenches. A lot of the fighting completely changes tactically and also strategically and operationally throughout the war as they are learning lessons. It is very peculiar to the First World War that wargamers do this kind of thing, where it's like it's a very specific year. Now, can you imagine them writing a set of rules, not just the Great Escape Games, but anybody writing a set of rules for the Second World War, but just calling it 1943 and not doing anything else? I mean, there are board games, Chitten counter board games, that do that kind of thing, where it's a specific battle. But generally, tabletop miniature war games don't do it, apart from when it comes to the First World War. And it is something that kind of frustrates me a little bit, and I just think, you know, there is a load more to the war than just those 6 months of armies moving about. Even, you know, it mentions here that cavalry is used in 1914. It's used all the way through the war. 1916, there's a cavalry attack by the 20th Deccan Horse at High Wood during the Battle of the Somme. In 1918, it is used. Lord Strathcona's horse are fighting their way through around Arras. There is also, you know, fighting on Cambrai using cavalry. Cavalry is used throughout the war. It's not, you know, they're not major charges. Some of them are, but not all of them are major charges. But they're using them as mounted infantry. And again, this is something that it just seems to elude wargamers very much. We're kind of tied to these wargaming myths, or First World War myths, really, about, you know, this lack of manoeuvre and things. But there you go. That's my rant over for the first part of it. However, the book itself, well, the rules themselves, I really like them. Very easy to read, only 40 pages, as I say. I'd read them within a day or so. You probably don't need to go over them more than a couple of times in a game, and I reckon by the end of the first game you probably at least have most of the rules in your head. It is brigade level, so that means that your smallest unit of manoeuvre pretty much is the battalion. So this breaks down into companies, obviously usually between 2 and 4 companies. per battalion. These are based on a specific set. If I was going to play these, they're based on, I think it's, let me just double check for you, just so you know. And it does have a ground scale as well. I'll give you that because a lot of people are interested in that. They're mainly for 12mm figures, which Great Escape Games actually also do, and they do full sets of armies for 1914 as well. They're about £30, I think, from their website. So it says, for relative scale, a battalion attacking would occupy a frontage of around 500 metres. For an ideal scale of your gaming area, 12 foot or 30 centimetres is approximately 300 metres. So 72 inches or 6 foot is 1,800 metres. 12 inches, 300 metres, 6 inches, 150 metres, and 1 inch, 25 metres. So that's your ground scale, basically. And as I say, it's all about brigade level. You are a brigadier, you are in charge of those battalions going forward and operating together. And as I say, this is the kind of thing that was happening throughout the war. Brigades are the level of operational usage throughout the war, especially in the years up to probably about 1917. So you could quite easily use these with, like I say, a few tweaks here and there, just to turn these into a later war game as well. I would sorry, yes, I was trying to work out the base sizes as well. It does tell you here. Let me just tell you. 4 infantry models are mounted on a 50mm by 25mm base. This makes up a typical infantry battalion. A company. So you'd have about anywhere between 2 and 4 of those in your battalion. Machine guns on a 25 by 25mm base. Cavalry regiments are 3 models on a 50 by 25mm base. So I would use my existing Peter Pig figures that I've got for square bashing in 15mm, slightly bigger and on smaller bases, but I don't really think the base size makes a huge amount of difference, to be honest, anyway, within the game. But if you want to play it how they have set it out, that's how they play it. Alright, well, what we'll do is I'll take you through the actual book itself, and we'll have a look at some of the rules. We discuss some of those bits because there's a lot of it I like. I've got to say, there's 1 or 2 things that are slightly confusing, but we'll come across those as we talk about the book itself. One more thing just to mention is very quickly are these cards. These, I think they're called tactical cards. Let me just double check for you. Yes, they are tactical advantage cards. These come with the deck, so you've already got these built in as well. And there's a number of these, so these are very easily accessible, part of that £15. So you can basically buy this, a couple of sets of the figures, and you'll be pretty much good to go almost instantly. Alright, that said, let's have a look at it. Let's see what the game's all about, see what I like and what I don't like. Okay, another thing to mention here again is it's very nicely produced. Actually, it's there's some really nice pictures, lots of photos of forces fighting, and good examples here and there of how to base your units and things. What I've noticed here as well, some of these, they're obviously using grass stuff to show which battalions some of these units are from, which is very nice. So let's just have a quick look through. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but I am going to go through some of the basics of the game itself. We've got a nice quick reference sheet here, which you could probably photocopy, or just you don't have to go through, and you can see actually with the quick reference sheet how simple it pretty much is, to be honest. And it is a very simple game, and I like it because of the abstraction of the level of it. Now, I said, you could quite easily use this later in the war. There is a development of weapons throughout the war, but at this level they're not really going to be that noticeable because they're going to be very similar to one another. It's like an arms race. So although it's mostly riflemen in 1914, by 17 and 18 there are grenades, you've got bombers, you've also got rifle grenadiers, Lewis guns, MG-015s and things like that are being used on the battlefield. But because they are being used by everybody, it doesn't give anyone a particular advantage. So you could quite easily play this game with those. But anyway, that's again rant over. So first up, we've already talked about this. This just gives you your basing and also your scale of the game as well, and what you need. One thing you need is command tokens and also these morale markers as well. This is really nice. It's like shock from other games that I like, which is nice. So it just impedes the unit for doing anything. And command tokens are basically your what you can do that turn. Now, there's one thing I think I'm not so keen on with the command tokens is, well, I'll talk about it when I get to it. It says it normally plays on a 6x4. So that's, you know, the usual Wargame standard. You could quite easily just half that and then just half scales or half the ranges or whatever, you know, if you've got a smaller table. No worries with that. But the command tokens, this is the part of it that I quite like actually, and initiative. So we got command tokens, you get a certain amount per unit, so you would get some for your general. You might get more depending on how good your general is. In the army list, some of the generals are better. You get 3 for each infantry battalion, you get 3 for each cavalry regiment, and then also 2 for each gun battery as well. And then that becomes your pool, and then what you do is you decide where they are going to get spent in the turn. So at the start of the turn, both players will decide. So basically everybody gets 1 command token. Now that is probably the one thing that I don't like, is that everybody gets to do one thing. You know, if you're a follower of this channel and you see my reviews on other things, I like rules where you are not able to do everything. But again, minor gripes, to be perfectly honest, and a lot of people don't like that. So, you know, this works for them. But the way this works is you have an order of battle. I'll just quickly show you one at the back of it here. So this is one to fill in, but there is also a... I don't want to jump too far forward at the moment, but let's just have a look. It does give you a really nice show of how to set out your order of battle here. So this is just an example of the 9th Infantry Brigade, British BEF in 1914, and you'd have your numbers of your units down here, and then on this sheet you would then distribute those command tokens amongst these, and you give more command tokens to the units that you want to do more. So for example, let's say we've got the Royal Scots Fusiliers and we've got the Lincolnshire Regiment. We want the Royal Scots Fusiliers in this turn just really to sit on their arse and defend, so we just give them 1 token. But we want the 1st Battalion of Lincolnshire Regiment to be piling forward, so we give them 3 or 4 tokens, and that allows them to spend those tokens throughout that turn and keep doing something. But it's a really nice way of doing it, because every time you activate a unit, you put a command token down by them. You could make those tokens into all sorts, like, you know, like dead figures or something like that, just something nice. It doesn't have to be a direct token, but every time that you put down a token, it makes it harder for that battalion, or that it is battalion is the smallest unit, to do something, because you are increasing their initiative dice roll, or their action dice roll to do something. Their first action is generally free, depends on what it is and what they're doing, but for infantry battalions it's generally free. Second action, you need to roll over a 2 on a d6 to get them to do something. Third action, you need to roll over a 3. Fourth action, so you can see, you're basically, the thing is as well, when you spend that action and you fail it, you are still using up that token. So even if you give, say, a unit 6 tokens, you might fail 3 of those rolls, so it means they only actually get 3 actions in total after all. So, you know, that's a really nice way of doing it, I thought, and it makes you think about what units you're going to are going to press into the attack in the first place, and also, you know, where you want your attacks to go in and who wants to be supporting and things like that. And I really like that. I thought it's a great way of doing it. The way it works as well as with initiative is that one player takes the initiative at the start. You roll the dice, whoever gets highest gets the initiative, unless it's scenario based. The initiative can then pass. It can either be passed by the player who has the initiative when they decided they've done enough, but you also remember you need to react to anything as well. You need to actually have command tokens. So the enemy will be reacting to you by spending their command tokens in your initiative turn. So in a way similar to O Group and other games that I've played like that, which I really like. So again, you've got to think about, do you react? Do you hold that token back? But if the enemy reacts and they roll a 6 when they actually when they do their reaction, they actually get to take the initiative from the player with the initiative, and you keep going through the turn until everybody's spent all their tokens or both have passed the initiative. And I think that's a really nice little system, the way that it's going to jump back and forth between the 2 players, saying, you know, you may seize the initiative by just reacting, and then you're able to go onto the offensive yourself and take the game on your side. And then who were reacting are now suddenly those who did have the initiative are now suddenly reacting against you. And I think that's a really nice way of doing these kind of games, because again, it's that abstract, jumping back and forth. Most things, like I say, most things will get a chance to activate at some point, either by activating themselves or reacting. And you can react to, I think you can react to pretty much anything you want on the table. You don't have to be in line of sight or anything. Let me just double check that, but I'm fairly sure it is. It says, note that a reaction does not need to be against a direct threat to a unit. Indeed, it could be used to react with a unit on the other side of the battlefield. So it's a chance of trying to seize that initiative as well, just by using a unit that isn't under threat. So it's a quite nice way of doing things. Again, slightly abstracted given the size of the game, and I like abstraction in war games because this then gives you more thought about where your command tokens are going to go and the overall command. You're not thinking about, what kind of weapons are these blokes carrying. They're all doing what they're supposed to be doing. You're the battalion commander, or the brigadier, you're the one that's pushing around those units on the map. The one thing I noticed with this, and I've tried to find it online, and I've seen other people being confused about it, is that it says here, your general is given 2 command tokens. Now, they are, but it doesn't actually tell you what the general can do. So you have a separate general, the brigadier, as part of your force, but it doesn't tell you what they can do with them. It mentions, in ever so slight terms, let me have a look here. It says, so the 2nd Battalion is nearly enough, and it says, a bit of support and the command tokens belonging to the general may be used flexibly in case some more is needed. Now, it doesn't say how far the general has to be from the units to use those command tokens. I'm assuming anywhere on the table, and it doesn't. This is only in an example. It doesn't actually say it's in the rules either. And I did read them a couple of times to try and find it, and it doesn't say what they can be used for, whether they can be, added on to things. Now, I'm assuming that they can just be added on to other units, tokens, when you need them, given that example there. It does also mention here in the morale test as well, if Tiny's tail will move out of the way here, I can't remember whereabouts it says it, but it does actually say something about using a general. There we go, look, it says cumulative effect. It may be tempting to throw everyone to attack. 1 second. This is not a great review at this point. But I can't remember. I think it mentions somewhere in here. Oh yeah, it says here, the unit attempting the morale test must spend one of its command tokens or use one from the general of the army. So there it's specific that they can be used for morale tests. Nowhere else is it specific that they can be used, the general's orders can be used like for firing or moving, for example. So a little bit of confusion there. That would be good to be clarified. I have looked around online to see if there was a particular answer for this, and nobody came up with one, or at least I couldn't see any reply to a similar question in one of the forums that I found. If you do know, let me know in the comments. I would say that this is something that you would discuss with your opponent before the game starts. Either, both of you can either use it for morale tests, or you can use it for anything, and you have to be within a certain range. I don't know, if it's just something that was not noted, that's all. So, more rules about reinforcements, bringing those on as well. And then also spotting as well. We can. There are some hidden markers occasionally in the game as well, if you want them, for people who are dug in, for example, or hiding. And you can do spotting and things, and there's all rules for that. Moving is pretty simple. The other thing is there's it's a fixed movement rate, which I'm not particularly keen on these days myself, but just to give you an example, an infantry battalion will move at 8 inches, but it'll move and fire at 4 inches. But it also has the assault move as well, which allows them to move into close assault. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to check it, but I can't remember actually being able to see how close assault works, apart from basically the same as firing. But I think it basically means that if you do assault, you can't actually be reacted against. I think. Again, let me just double check that. Yeah, it's not particularly clear what the assault move does apart from being able to move and then fire and then move again halfway through it. But you know, again, I'm sure there's somebody out there who's watching this who knows better than me at this point. So I've only really read through the rules. I've not played it on the tabletop. The other thing here as well is here's the firing chart. Very simple. So you could quite, you know, you'll easily pick this up within, like I say, a couple of turns within a game, I would have thought, which makes for a very quick game, which is always good as far as I'm concerned. However, this is done on D10s, and you remember earlier the reactions and the activations were done on D6s, so you're going to need D10s and D6s for this game. Each battalion rolls two dice. You might get an addition if you're close range, or if there's any other additional dice. And then also you need a 6 or above on a D10 to hit with various modifiers, and the modifiers are pretty simple. Obviously, if the target's moved, target's in cover, obscured by smoke. If it's close range, if it's elite or trained, or the firer is poor, or at least there's one morale marker on the firer. So those morale markers do match up, and this is where the morale markers come in. Every hit, you roll a d6. So again, this is slightly confusing. I mean, I would have tried to have made the firing a d6 and then the morale a d6, or the firing a d10 and the morale a d10 as well, just so you're rolling the same dice at least. Because this is, you know, it's very similar. It's a 4+ to hit, so it's a 50% chance. Sorry, it's 4+ of inflicting damage every time you score a morale marker on the opponent. You roll an extra dice, and you get a 4+ on that. And then they roll for their casualty cover as well. So this again, you can see this is on D6. So in the open, machine guns will be rolling on a 3 up, in the open a 4 up, in covers and ruins and buildings 6 up, and then fortifications and trenches a 5 up, and then a 6 up for trenches. So see, automatically we've got trench rules in here. So this could quite easily work for 15, 16, 17 and 18 because you've already got trenches in there. So it's not a great stretch to do it beyond 1914. This is what I was talking about earlier. It's very simple, and the way that it works, there you go, there's close combat. I've overlooked it earlier, but it's very simple. The way it works is you take hits on each of your companies, and then once you take more morale markers than its morale rating, a base is then removed. So if you have a morale rating of 4, you take 4 hits, you take off a company, so you're slowly grinding down them, and any excess stay on that unit as well. So if there was 6 on it, you would remove 1 base, but 2 would remain. And also, as I said before, with the initiative and also with the activations, it makes it harder for them to activate with those morale markers. The one thing about morale is you can get rid of it, but again it uses up command tokens, but the enemy can't react against it. So that's one of the things you probably do that at the start of your turn, but you can also do it throughout the turn as well. There is no morale phase, you just do it when you want to, but it's obviously it makes it difficult if you fail it, and you know, initiative passes and somebody reacts against you and things. So it gets more and more difficult the more morale you get on top of you. So it's something to keep a check on, and I quite like that grind of casualties making the unit less and less active in the game itself, similar to things like the Elan in Blucher, really, or Shock in any Too Fat Lardies games. We've also got some artillery rules as well. They've got onboard and offboard rules here. I'm not going to go too much into these, but again, this is the kind of stuff that could be used quite late on in the war easily. Close combat, machine guns, obviously, as part of the First World War. And smoke rules as well, which is quite nice. It just gives you a -1 to hit, I think, on the it's blocks line of sight and you basically target your own unit to cover them in smoke. So again, quite nice. Rules for cavalry as well. We'll go through that, and then we come on to this part. This is the tactical advantage cards. So I'll just show you these as well. I've got these here. These are the ones that come in, and these are kind of like, I suppose, what would you call them? They're reactions. They're also events cards. They're bonuses, and you would get a number of these, and you play them. I'll go through how you do it. Each player is dealt 3 cards, which are kept secret, and then 3 cards are dealt face up. The side with the best general, judged by the number of command tokens, selects a card, and the opposing player selects one. If the general's rating the same, the defender chooses first, otherwise you roll a dice. The remaining card is shuffled back into the deck, and each player then chooses to discard a card from their hand, drawing from the top of the deck to replace it. So it's quite a complicated system of getting those cards, but you do get them. And again, you can keep these secret, or you can play them, or you can add tokens to them to increase them as they go on. So most of them are pretty simple and obvious. They may cost command tokens as well. So it's stuff like being entrenched, fog of war, push on lads, reserves. I mean, most of these speak for themselves. Then you also have specific ones for particular units. So like the Germans have got Jaegers, light infantry, Halten Vus, Halten Ist. Hold on to whatever you can. So to behold, the offensive Leutrons, offensive at all costs by the French. Then you've got all contemptibles, the British, of course, and marksmanship for the British. And these ones, these are a bit different. In the what you do is you actually save command tokens on the cards, like the All Contemptibles. You put command tokens onto them, and then you play at any time. Each of your saved command tokens is played at once to a maximum of 1 infantry dismounted cavalry unit, and each token spent in this manner may be used to take a firing action. So the British have that. They can fire. The Germans over here, what is it? They can. They've got the light infantry. They've got the hold on to whatever. It's play at any times, and the number of command tokens plays indicates the number of immediately following successful hit rolls that are ignored, so they're taking less damage and that kind of thing. So it adds a little bit of flavour to the game, I think, and I think that would be something that's nice and interesting. Just as you throw it down, and obviously you don't know where your opponent is. Obviously, I'm thinking solo as well. I mean, I play against opponents, of course I do, but I also play solo, so I'm not entirely sure how you do these kind of cards in a solo game, because you're obviously going to know what your opponent's got. But it's something that I'd have a little bit more of a thoughts about. But I quite like those kind of actions as well, that you can just throw down a card and do something different. Alright, then we've got some scenario rules as well towards the back. It just gives you some of these rules here. I'm not going to go through everything, as I say, with a couple of examples. So this is always good to see in rules as well. So we've got capture, meeting engagements, cover the retreat. So there's 3 basic scenarios. There are 2 downloadable scenarios from the Great Escape Games website, which you can check. And then we've also got talking about orders of battle and creating your army as well. There are points, which I'm never that bothered about. I'd probably rather do, historical orders of battle. And again, it kind of allows you to do that, really, with the examples here. And it just gives you an example of all the units that are in. And we were talking earlier about morale. Pretty much every unit takes 4 hits before you remove a base of morale. And then it gives you a good example of an order of battle, as we've already looked at it, the 9th Infantry Brigade here. Just with bits and pieces, and as I say, this would be the sheet that you would use to place your orders tokens at the command tokens at the start of the game. And then we have the army lists themselves. So we've got the British Infantry Brigade, the British Cavalry Brigade. Gives you the what you need, your points, your compulsory points of 48 points, and then also you can add these optional points as well, so battalions, regiments, cavalry regiments, field gun batteries, all that kind of thing. So you could really get a really good historical order of battle in there. We've got German Infantry Brigade, German Cavalry Brigade, French Infantry, French Cavalry, and then also Belgian Infantry, Belgian Cavalry Brigade. So you've got 4 armies straight away there, which is great. And some recent rules that I reviewed had nothing like this, so it's really nice to see that you've got these basic ideas just to how to make up this stuff as well. And then we just go on to the back, and we've got another quick reference sheet here for firing. And also that principal sheet here as well for your order of battle. So this is where you put your reserves, and also where you want to distribute your command tokens as well. So that's the game. Unfortunately there's no index, but there is a contents page, so that's always good at least, so you can jump about. But as I say, I think, to be perfectly fair, after a couple of turns of playing this game, you probably have it pretty much in your head. I think it's going to be a relatively simple game to play on the tabletop, and a lot of fun. Almost beer and pretzely, but also lots of command decisions with those command tokens, just deciding where your attack is going to go in. as I said, I don't really know why it is 1914 only. You could quite easily expand this, and I'm fairly sure somebody else probably has done this already. I haven't checked it, but I'm sure somebody's already added things in for various things later in the war. But I'd certainly be playing this probably 16 onwards, to be honest, with very little changes to the core rules here. Looks like a good fun game, and as I say, it seems to be very well supported by Great Escape Games with their ranges of figures and other bits and pieces. And also, you know, I think there will be fan-made scenarios out there as well. Again, I've not checked that, but I'm fairly sure there will be. So I think for £15. If you want a quick introduction to the First World War, I don't think you could go too wrong, to be perfectly honest. And you know, I'm generally quite critical of First World War games simply because of my interest in the First World War. But this one, I would be quite happy to play this. It seems very similar to another game that I love from the First World War, which is Square Bashing. So I think it's very similar in quite a few ways, and of a similar scale as well, which I very much like. So I'll leave it at that. I'll say thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Also check out the Patreon, and also check out the channel memberships, where you will get early access to most of my videos, and they will be ad-free as well. If you've got any comments, any follow-up comments about this, then please let me know in the comments below, and also give me a like or even a dislike if you didn't like what you saw. Thank you very much for watching.